Most people have heard of NISA here in Japan. So NISA is the Nippon ISA. It's a tax-free investment account. It's a really easy way to invest your money, and then eventually when you sell it, it's tax-free. You don't have to pay any capital gains tax. You don't have to pay tax on dividends. It's a wonderful system, but not quite as many people know about iDeCo. So iDeCo is Japan's version of the US 401k. It's a defined contribution pension scheme. So you put money into it every month. That reduces your income tax, and you can invest your money in the funds that you choose from your provider's lineup of funds. And that keeps ticking along until you reach retirement, and then you can cash it in, you can get your money. And it's a pretty cool system, but it might not be for everyone. So, who exactly should be thinking about using iDeCo in Japan in 2025? Let's talk about it. So I posted about this on LinkedIn recently, but my wife's iDeCo account is doing incredibly well. She's had iDeCo since before it was called iDeCo. So iDeCo started off as a scheme that had the rather clunky name Kojin Gata Kakute Kyoshitsu Nenkin, and that was the only thing it was known as, and it was restricted to people who were self-employed. So just to people who were paying Kokumin Nenkin, so they weren't working for a company. They were either freelancers or maybe they had a small business and so on. This is to help them save for retirement and supplement their Nenkin. Now, along the way, the government expanded coverage so that pretty much anyone can now pay into iDeCo. And the limits have been raised as well. So it's a pretty decent option for most people who are working in Japan. Now, my wife's been paying in for almost 15 years now. And as you can see here, she's paid in just over 12 million yen. And the account has grown by about 8 million yen. So the account's now worth about 20 million yen. She's going to keep paying in as we go forward. And eventually, I think this account will be worth between 30 and 40 million yen once she reaches retirement age. Now, that's pretty cool. That's pretty much enough to fund a normal retirement just from itself. Now, she's been able to pay in 68,000 yen a month over those 15 years. But for someone maybe in their 20s or their 30s, just starting out with iDeCo now, these are not completely unrealistic returns. My iDeCo account, not quite as good. You can see here, basically, I didn't have access to iDeCo for a really long time because I was a public servant. I was a member of a Kyosai. I was working in the university. So until quite recently, Kyosai members couldn't pay into iDeCo. They weren't allowed to. Eventually, we were allowed to pay in. We were only allowed to pay in 12,000 yen a month, which is not a lot of money. So I was paying in 12,000 yen a month for a few years until I finished working in 2022. And at that point, I started paying Kokumin Nenkin. So I got access to the expanded 68,000 yen a month iDeCo. And so I've been paying in to that for about 3 years now. And that's one reason why this account doesn't have the same kind of growth there, because most of the money's been put in recently over the last 3 years. And so it hasn't had as much time to grow. But even so, we can see here, paid in about 3 million yen. It's grown by about 1.5 million yen so far. I'm going to continue paying in for another 10, 20 years. And so, again, this is going to end up a fairly nice retirement nest egg as well. So, what is iDeCo? So, iDeCo stands for Individual Defined Contribution. That's where the name comes from. It's also got that funky little lowercase I, like Apple. And so, it basically means you can put in a certain amount of money. That's the defined contribution bit. And it's individual. So it's something that you own and run by yourself. It's not a company pension. Those are called DC pensions in Japan, defined contribution pensions. Some people might be lucky enough to have a DB pension, a defined benefit pension. But recently, those are quite rare because they put the risk on the company. Whereas a DC pension, the risk is on the individual. So you're putting in your money, you're choosing how to invest your money. Depending on how those investments do, that's how much money you'll get in retirement. How much you can put into your iDeCo account depends on what kind of Nenkin you pay. If you pay into Kokumin Nenkin, which is the basic state pension here in Japan, your iDeCo contribution limit is 68,000 yen a month. That's the maximum. The minimum contribution is 5,000 yen. And you can pay anything in between those two numbers in 1,000 yen increments. If you are a normal kind of company worker, if you work for a company, you can pay in up to 23,000 yen into iDeCo. Again, the minimum's 5,000, the maximum's 23,000. If you are a dependent spouse, you can also pay in up to 23,000 yen into iDeCo, but I'm not sure that makes sense really, because the main benefit of iDeCo is lowering your income tax. If you're a dependent spouse, you're not really paying income tax. So it kind of begs the question whether it's worth doing iDeCo at all. You might be better off using a NISA account or even just investing in a taxable account. If you are a public servant or a teacher, a doctor, someone who's in a kyosai, your limit is now 20,000 yen. Luckily, they put that up at the end of last year, which is a huge improvement for public servants. So what are the benefits of iDeCo? Well, the main benefit is that you're going to be able to reduce your income tax. What iDeCo does is you put in pre-tax income into the account, which means that the amount of money you put into iDeCo is subtracted from your salary before your taxes are calculated. So basically that means that you're going to get an effective return of whatever your marginal tax rate is. So if you're a 20% tax rate payer, you're getting an automatic 20% return on your iDeCo contributions. This is pretty sweet. So not only do you get to invest, but you also get a bit of a tax break on your income taxes and then anything that's dependent on income as well. The other benefit of iDeCo is that the system's automated. So once you open your account, once you set it up, once you decide which funds you want to pay money into, that just happens automatically. Every month, the money's taken from your bank account or from your paycheck. It's deposited into your iDeCo account. The funds that you chose are bought, and it all happens in the background without you having to do anything. So you can just sit back and just let that money accumulate and be invested for decades. And then at the end, when you cash out, you might be pleasantly surprised if you haven't been paying attention. Now, the drawbacks to iDeCo, the main drawback, I'm not sure it is a drawback, to be honest. The main drawback is that you don't have access to your money. Once you put money into your iDeCo account, you can't get it out again unless you die. In which case your family or your heirs would get the money, or until you reach the age of 60, at which point you're allowed to cash it out. You're also allowed to leave it in there to keep growing. And currently, the maximum limit for iDeCo is 75. So at the age of 75, you would be forced to cash out your account. So you can choose the timing there. Another drawback of iDeCo is that there's a lot of paperwork involved and that it's a bit annoying to use. So basically, iDeCo is run by a government organization called JS&T, but you're provided access through a broker. So you've got these two different organizations that are dealing with it. And it just means that everything to do with iDeCo takes quite a long time to happen. So opening an account takes maybe 2 or 3 months. Trying to make any changes to the account can take, a few weeks up to a few months even. So it's annoying, but assuming that you set it up correctly in the first place, you don't really have to make many changes along the way. Now, recently, some pretty big changes to iDeCo have been announced. One of the bigger ones is perhaps that we're now going to be able to contribute to iDeCo up to the age of 70. So you can keep paying in to iDeCo. As long as you're working, as long as you're paying Nenkin, you can keep paying into iDeCo up until the age of 70. That will give you a chance to really build up a large pot for retirement. Another huge change is that the contribution limits will be going up soon. I'm not entirely sure when. They haven't announced the timing for this, but they have said that people paying Kokumi Nenkin, so they're currently paying in 68,000 yen a month, will be able to pay in up to 75,000 yen a month. And even more important, people paying Kosei Nenkin, so the company employees who are currently paying in up to 23,000 yen, they'll be able to pay in up to 62,000 yen a month, reduce their income tax accordingly, and really have a chance to build up a large amount of money for retirement. I haven't seen anything about Kyosai members, and their contributions went up recently from 12,000 to 20,000 yen a month. So I'm a little bit worried that maybe they're not going to see an increase. So I'm hoping they'll get a similar increase to the Kosei Nenkin people, but I haven't seen anything about it so far. So, who should use iDeCo? I think basically anyone who's going to be here for the long term. If you're planning to retire in Japan, if you're planning to stay in Japan for the rest of your life, iDeCo is a bit of a no-brainer. You can save on income tax, you can invest. It's a very easy system to use, and it's basically fantastic if you're planning to retire here. If you're not planning to retire here, if you're planning to leave Japan in the medium term, say, then probably NISA is going to be a better fit for you. And if you're going to leave Japan even sooner than that, then possibly you might want to look into investing abroad rather than in Japan, because when you leave Japan, you'll probably have to close all those accounts and take it with you. What happens to your iDeCo account though when you leave Japan? Well, you're not allowed to close it unless you just opened it and you haven't paid in a lot of money. In that case, there's a special exemption where if a non-Japanese person leaves Japan and they've only had the iDeCo account for, I think, less than 2 years, and they haven't paid in more than something like 200,000 yen, they're allowed to cash out. Anyone else is not allowed to cash out. So you have to stop contributing to the account. You're not allowed to put money into the account once you leave Japan, but the current investments will stay there. You'll be able to administer the account still through your broker. And then once you reach the age of 60, you'll be able to cash out as normal and get your money sent to a different country. People often ask me which provider should I use for iDeCo, and I would like to show you on here. So basically, much like NISA, much like any investments, we generally recommend using one of the big online brokers in Japan. That would be Rakuten Securities or SBI Securities or Monex Securities. And for many people, Monex actually has the best iDeCo lineup because they have the one fund that is the most popular fund in Japan, which is the eMaxis Slim All Country Fund. That's the only provider that has that fund in their iDeCo account. The other providers, they don't have that particular fund. They have very similar funds. So it's not the end of the world if you have a Rakuten account or an SBI account. I personally have a Rakuten account and it's fine. There's perfectly good options in there. But the Monex account does have that one kind of super easy choice in there. So this is my favorite website to compare iDeCo providers. It's called iDeCo Navi. They've got this kind of Spartan looking but very useful table on here. So basically this shows you all the different providers in Japan. You can see, so these are the various fees for the account. So this first fee is the fee that you have to pay to open the account. And this is mandated by the government, which is why it's the same for every single provider. The next fee is the fee you pay if you're actively paying into the account. So if you're contributing money to the account, you would pay, in this case, 160 yen per month to use the account actively. And for most providers, it's 171 yen. There's also a fee if you don't contribute to the account. So, for example, if you decided to stop paying into iDeCo, you didn't want to pay the minimum 5,000 yen, then you would pay this lower fee of 55 yen for this first provider and 66 yen for most of the other providers. There's also a fee if you want to transfer your iDeCo account to a different provider. So, say you had an account with Nomura Shoken, and you wanted to change it to Monex, you could do so, and Nomura doesn't charge you a fee, which is very kind of them. And this final fee is the fee that you pay for receiving money from your iDeCo account, assuming that it's sent to you by a bank. Now, let's take a look at the Monex lineup here. So a lot of people choose to have their iDeCo account with the same broker that has their NISA account, say, or their taxable account, but that's not necessary. You could easily choose a different broker, especially because iDeCo is largely handled by JS&T anyway, and so it doesn't really matter which broker you have the iDeCo account with. You're going to normally just set it up and it's going to chug along in the background. You're not going to be checking it all the time. You don't have to log in to carry out any operations. So there's not necessarily an advantage to having them in the same provider. There might be a disadvantage in some ways. So some people prefer to have their accounts with different providers just to have that little bit of diversification on there. Anyway, let's take a look at the Monex lineup here. And I really like this because it gives you the most important information just straight up, which is the annual fee for the account and then the actual cost of having the account. Down here, we can see what type of investment it is. So they're all Toshi Shintaku, which would be mutual funds, apart from the cash fund. So there's always a cash fund in iDeCo. You can put your money into cash, and all the rest of them are mutual funds. Then you can see what kind of investment it is. So these would be domestic securities, so Japanese stocks, Japanese bonds, foreign stocks, and so on. And so this is the most popular fund in Japan, the Emax's Slim All Country Fund. For a lot of people, just buying that in your iDeCo account, not buying anything else, assuming that you have other investments and cash and so on outside of iDeCo, that is a perfectly fine solution. That's basically what I do with my iDeCo account. I put everything into world stocks because they're going to give you the biggest growth over the long term. Now, the most important thing, obviously, is the fees here. So you want to make sure that the fund is doing what you want it to. So, for example, if it's a stock fund, if it's a bond fund, if it's a REIT fund, a real estate fund, and so on. And then you want to look at the fees. So generally speaking, whichever fund is the right type and has the lowest fees, that's a good choice for what you're looking for. So here, the Emax's Slim All Country Fund, this is the cheapest of the foreign stock funds. So it makes sense to buy this one. Now, let's take a look just to contrast this. So you can see these fees are fairly reasonable. You've got a 0.1% fee. The Emax's Slim is 0.05% fee, 0.08% fee. These are active funds. Generally, we want to avoid active funds. You're paying a lot more for an uncertain performance. You don't know if it's going to do better or worse than the passive funds, but you're going to be paying a lot more in fees. So generally speaking, after paying the fees, most investors do worse if they buy active funds. I wouldn't bother buying an active fund. Just get a passive fund in here would be the general advice. Right, let's compare this with an option that lots of people ask me about, which is the Japan Post Bank. Most people have a post office bank account. They're all over the place. They're very easy to open. And so people think maybe I could do my iDeCo through the post office. And generally speaking, that's possible, but I wouldn't recommend it. And the reason for that is because of the fees. So if you remember with Monex, we were looking at, 0.1% fee, 0.05% fee, 0.08% fee. Here, that is very much not the case. So here, looking here, the best passive foreign stock fund on here is 0.275%. So that's 5 times as much as the fee for the Emax's Slim All Country Fund. There's basically not much difference between those two funds. So paying 5 times as much for the same thing doesn't make sense. It's going to have quite a big impact on your return over 20, 30 years. So definitely worth looking at the fees and making sure that you choose a provider that has a decent lineup of funds that have competitive fees that you want to buy. Okay, let's take a look at this fund here. So the fees again are slightly high. And then if we have a look here, so we can see this fund is made up of 40% Japanese bonds, 10% foreign bonds, 30% Japanese stocks, and 20% foreign stocks. So most people, that's a very conservative and very Japan-oriented allocation. That might make sense for some people. It doesn't make sense for me, for example. It's not generally what I'd recommend here. So just, make sure that you understand what's in the fund. Make sure you check out the fees. See if you can get a better option with a different broker. And that's basically how you would choose an iDeCo provider. So should you be using iDeCo in Japan in 2025? Well, if you are working here, you're paying tax, you're paying income tax, you want to reduce your income taxes, iDeCo is a great way to do that. If you're planning to stay here for retirement, iDeCo is a great way to get ready for that retirement. If you're not planning to stay in Japan, then NISA might be a better option. And of course, using both is fantastic. You can use NISA to invest for the long term. You can use iDeCo to invest for retirement. The people I wouldn't recommend using iDeCo are people who you are likely to leave Japan, either in the short term or maybe in the medium term. It's not the end of the world if you have to leave Japan and leave your iDeCo account behind, but it's a bit of a hassle, right? You have to remember that you have an iDeCo account. Then when you reach the age of 60, you have to, get in touch with your provider and ask them to send you the money. And you'll have to do this in Japanese, and it might be a bit of a hassle. So for a lot of people, that might not be worth the trouble. But how about you? Do you have an iDeCo account? How's it looking at the moment? What's your, how much have you put in? What's the gain on the account? How are you doing with that? And if you don't have one, why not? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.